Hey everybody, Jimmy Smith. Keeping up with some MMA news on the Conor Chandler side. This time, really focusing in on what Michael Chandler's going to do. He released some statements about kind of do this typical Chandlerisms of like, I'm going to keep moving forward and can't slow me down and, you know, ready to go whenever type thing. Dana White, of course, saying that we'll do whatever Michael Chandler wants. If he wants to fight this summer, fine. If he wants to wait around for Conor, fine. He's been a trooper this whole time and we're willing to do whatever he wants. Now, to back up a little bit to last November when this fight was originally supposed to happen and he had finished coaching opposite Conor McGregor on The Ultimate Fighter, when that whole process started, we all knew this might take a while. And Chandler, 2-3 in the UFC. His 2 wins against Tony Ferguson and Dan Hooker. His 3 losses, very tough guys in Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and, of course, Charles Oliveira. So he's lost some really great fighters, but still doesn't have a winning record. Didn't even at 500 in the UFC. From the beginning, and part of this is based on what DC said about the bonuses he was given after beating Rumble Johnson, and I want to say it was Volkan Oezdemir. I know one of them's Rumble Johnson. I don't remember what the other one was. That the UFC basically walked in the locker room and the brass gave him $1 million. $1 million. Not a fight bonus. They just gave him $1 million twice. So $2 million total. I can't believe the UFC hasn't done something like that with Michael Chandler. The idea that this guy keeps waiting and waiting and waiting. Yes, he has other things. He's been doing some public speaking work. I don't know if that's paying the bills. He might have other investments. He says he's doing fine and doesn't need the money to fight. It was part of the reason he's sitting out. I find it hard to believe the UFC wouldn't have given... They obviously gave him something for The Ultimate Fighter, you know, to television for free. But something above and beyond that to keep him on the hook this entire time. And I don't think enough people have made that connection. The UFC, if they handed $2 million to DC for no reason that I'm aware of, that they couldn't hand one to Michael Chandler to make him wait a year to take on Conor McGregor, to wait it out, essentially. So I think there is some kind of financial incentive for Chandler to have held on this long, be it some huge payday for The Ultimate Fighter or something the UFC is going, okay, you don't have to fight. Let's just take this money and wait. So that's probably happening. But even if it isn't, the one thing people don't look at enough, I think, when it comes to Michael Chandler, I went over this in the last video, but I think it deserves some diving into, is when I look at the top 10 at 155, Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler need one another. They're the only winnable fight that makes any sense for both fighters. And on the Chandler side, when I look at the top 10, number one, in the top 5 are 3 guys who have already beaten him. So you have the champ, Islam Makhachev, not going to get shot at him anytime soon. Arman Tsarukyan at number 1. He's waiting for his title opportunity. He's not going to fight Michael Chandler. Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier round out your top 4. All of those guys beat Michael Chandler already. There's no reason. Dustin Poirier, I don't know if he ever fights again. There's no incentive for any of the guys to fight Mike again. Number 5 is Matish Gamrot. So when we look at the top 5, and Mike's number 6. The problem with Mike, when you look at the top 10, is Mike is explosively dangerous for round and a half, 2 rounds. After that, you can beat him. You can even beat him in the first couple rounds if you catch him, because he's a wide puncher. That's what Patricio Pitbull did. The idea that it's not the juice isn't worth the squeeze. If you are near a title shot or on that trajectory for a title shot, Mike is dangerous enough to screw everything up. And beating him, once again, he's 2-3. Beating him doesn't do a ton for you except act as a placeholder where you'll get your fight purse, you'll get everything you need, that'll hold you for a little bit. It won't catapult you into superstardom or title contention because you beat Michael Chandler. So if you're on a title trajectory, it makes more sense to stay on that trajectory rather than sidetrack yourself to fight Michael Chandler. Getting beyond his ranking, once again, he's number 6. Beneil Dariush is at number 7. Rafael Fiziev at number 8. Max Holloway at number 9. Renato Moicano at number 10. If I were a betting man, and I break down odds for you guys, so I guess you say I'm a betting man, whatever, I wouldn't pick Mike in any of those fights except Moicano at number 10. 11 is Dan Hooker, whom he's already beaten. 12 is Benoit Saint-Denis. 13 is Jalen Turner. 14 is Rafael dos Anjos. Number 15 is Bobby Green. Moicano, maybe you'd favor him, obviously against Dan Hooker. Benoit Saint-Denis showed enough in the Poirier fight that if I believe he got his gas straight, that'd be a tough fight. Jalen Turner, that's a tough fight. Dos Anjos is a tough fight. Bobby Green makes a lot of tactical mistakes that maybe Michael Chandler could take advantage of early. But there's just not a lot of fights in the top 15 where I would pick Michael Chandler. Now, he can beat anybody. He's powerful, he's strong, he's explosive. He can catch anybody on the chin and put him out. But the better fighters get, the harder it is to catch them in those early rounds, and you got to go into the deep waters with him, and that's where Mike generally has trouble. Tactically, Mike is one of those guys who fights the way a beginning fighter fights, right? If you've been in a lot of MMA gyms, or fight gyms, period, somebody like Michael Chandler, who was explosive, an All-American, his senior year at Mizzou, he took 5th, and physical, powerful, been an athlete his whole life, they tend to pick up the power punches really, really well. They develop a good right hand, a good left hook, a good leg kick. That's about it. They're dynamic, right? They're good at the basics. But as they move up through the local regional scene, all that stuff, they get better. They get more smooth. They rely on their jab a little bit more. Their defense gets better. Their head movement gets better. The style Mike has will get you through the regional scene. It will get you into the major promotion. It won't take you into contendership. You have to change things. And one of the problems is Mike's style has worked enough that he hasn't felt the need to change it. One of the hardest things to do as a coach is to convince someone that a strategy or a style that is working right now won't work in the future. They tend to say, well, it's working right now. Ben Askren, I remember him saying over and over, well, I'll stop wrestling when somebody can stop it. But Ben, when someone does stop it, you're not going to have any other skills to rely on. Your striking is amateurish at best. You need other stuff. And the moment somebody could stop his takedown, it was Jay Haran. I thought he looked terrible in that fight. So it's hard to convince somebody who's winning on a particular strategy that, hey, yeah, this is working now. You need to add other wrinkles to your game because it's not going to work at the elite level. Mike has had enough success throughout his career that he's never kind of had to have that come to Jesus moment with himself or his coaches. And so it was the Poirier fight, I want to say. And Mike is out there, and right in the beginning of the fight, he's just bouncing around and moving like crazy. And I went, oh, God, that's how somebody fights early on in their career until they learn to kind of be smooth and fluid. Mike still relies on a style that he just is almost like bound up with energy and just like can't wait to get out there and do it. And that's great, but you got to play the chess game. You got to play the long game to beat guys at the elite level. And Mike never really knew to do that. And I think it's because he had so much success that he never really had to. It was always, even in Bellator, like 3 steps forward, 1 step back. He would look great, and Bellator is going to make him the poster boy, and everything's going to be great, and then he loses to Eddie Alvarez. Okay, he rights the ship, gets back with it, loses to Will Brooks twice. All right, he kind of gets back into it, kind of does his thing, and loses to Brent Primus, and and loses to Pitbull. Like, he would always, right when it looked like he was going to be a long-term champion and star and all that stuff, he would have that setback tactically. He would always go back to making those mistakes that would cost him against certain guys. Now, once again, won the rematch with Brent Primus, got that one back, never got another shot at Patricio Pitbull. He just tends to make the mistakes that hold him back from that. And he's doing the same thing in the UFC where, once again, he's 2-3. He just can't seem to get enough fights against great fighters in a row to win for contendership. Now I think he's kind of past that. He's getting a little bit older anyway, partly waiting for the Conor fight. So that's the issue when you say, where is Michael Chandler going to go? When I look at the top 15, I don't see a lot of winnable fights. So it might make more sense, and once again, I think there might be a little like, here's $1 million, chill out and wait. There might be some hidden financial incentive for Mike to just wait for Conor. Also, when you look at the bookings and when you look at who's available, I don't see Mike getting past those guys. And if he does, it is literally just a placeholder. It's just getting him... It's just getting him through the next few months to do what, right? I don't see there are many fighters that are available that are going to get him into contendership that he can beat. He's got to beat the Gamrots of the world. Saryukin, once again, I don't see any of the guys he's already beaten having a motivation to rematch him. Max Holloway, maybe. There were talks about maybe if Conor dropped out, Max Holloway jumps in. It's a BMF fight. And the way Max Holloway looked last time, I don't think he beats Max Holloway. So when I look at Mike's options moving forward, I don't see a lot of winnable fights that would be worth even the slim possibility of fighting Conor McGregor later this year. I think that's what he's going to do. He's going to hang out and wait for Conor. The first video I made on my YouTube channel when I came back was called The Conor Con. Go back and check it out. One of the things I said is, a con requires hope. The analogy I always use is my father was a pool hustler, and he used to say, you don't blow them off the table. You beat them by one shot. You beat them by, so they keep betting, thinking, next one I'm going to get you because I just barely came down. Well, you're just barely losing, so I'm letting you barely lose. He said that's the key to a pool con, is you don't show how good you are. You're just barely above the guy, so he keeps betting money to win. And that's the same thing with Conor. The next Conor fight is always just over the horizon. There's always just this reason why it didn't work out, so you end up putting your dollars down. And I think Chandler is not only stuck in that mentality of, oh, Conor's right around the corner, like a bunch of Conor fans are, but there's also, when he looks at the field, I don't see a ton of winnable fights for him. Also, Cowboy Cerrone said publicly, I didn't make any more money to fight Conor McGregor than I did anybody else. Wasn't a title fight, so there wasn't an automatic pay-per-view percentage for Cowboy. So he got his normal rate. For Chandler to be waiting this long, he's got to have a points deal. That fight has to be worth more money than the 2 fights, at least, that he has not taken in the meantime. So Cowboy was very honest about, I didn't get a points deal. I made what I always made. So, fighting Conor didn't mean anything to me financially. Chandler has to have a points deal in order to make all of this waiting somehow worth it. Just fighting Conor because you fought Conor and you're on a big show, great. That doesn't pay the bills. So I believe not only that the UFC has given him probably some cash to wait, which I think would be perfectly fair, I also believe he's got to have a points deal in order to wait this long to fight Conor McGregor. So I think he's going to wait simply because there aren't the winnable fights that'll get him anywhere in the meantime. I think these 2 fighters need each other. I still don't think Conor ever fights again. I'll believe it when he walks in the octagon, but I think Chandler's going to chase that all the way to at least the end of this year. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Like, subscribe. I appreciate all of you.